Happy holidays. Yes, it is that time. And it is Hump Night, Wednesday, December 3rd, 2008. 7 p.m. on the Pacific coast of the United States. And this is Lundon Calling, the talk show you've been waiting for. At least I hope you have. My name is Ace London. Welcome all you wild and wonderful weirdos out there in Podland. Thank you very much for tuning in to the live show. The pre- and post-show music that you find on our site is provided by Sonic Eccles. More information is provided on the website. And I'm supposed to warn you in advance every show that if you have virgin ears, don't listen. Because folks tell me I do have a potty mouth. So I have a potty mouth, and my co-host likes to tipple the glass just a little bit. Lance Helms, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, and can you hear the clinking of the ice in my glass?
Oh, yes, I can, Lance. December, don we now our gay apparel. La 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 la. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it's that time of the year already. Aristotle said it, and I say it on every show, probably more than once. So those of you who are listening will get it through your head. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Yes, thank you, Ari. I call him Ari, you know. We're old friends. I'm sure that Lance is too young to remember Ari, but he used to stand in the Greek Stoas and on the, up in the Parthenon and everything like that. And he would sit and talk to all of us. It was wonderful. Thank you, Aristotle. Lance, what's your desire for our show? Have you thought about that? What would you like to see the show become or be?
You mean more than it's already becoming?
Yes. Well, do you have any grandiose ideas or anything along that line?
Lord, this sounds like something that goes beyond even tonight's shows. This is a cosmic yearning we're talking about?
Well, it could be. Well, let me tell you what I think. My desire is that through all of the silly jokes and all of my idiocy, that we'll be able to throw out some gems of truth, which folks will be able to use to help themselves have a richer, more fuller life.
I heartily agree.
And there's a method to my madness with all of that, which is why the show is a little different probably than the normal. But that's my desire. I agree with that.
I can.
Yes.
That's noble. I would hope that that's why people were listening.
Well, folks know that both of us are gay men. Therefore, we don't hide it. And so whether we're talking about, you name it, whatever it is, we are still gay men. We're not going to be, beaten around the bush there. That's the reality that we live with. Hey, do you know what December 10th is?
I do.
Yeah.
I think this December 10th, 2008 will be the 19th anniversary of Patrick's crossing over.
Well, you're right there. Oh, I wasn't even thinking of that right now.
Oh, there's something I'm missing. What is it?
Yes. It is a day without a gay day.
Oh, is that it? Why did I think it? Oh, because December 10th is a Wednesday. That's right.
Yeah. It's a day without a gay day. And they're trying to do something. I don't know what it is, but you can check it out on Free Speech TV's Gay USA, which is hosted by Ann Northrup and Andy Hum, two very, very wonderful activists for many, many years, and learn about what a day without a gay means. In other words, if you're gay and you're working in the department store, don't show up. What would it do to the nation if all of the gays and lesbians did not go to work that day? A day without...
God, the bad hair days that would ensue. Oh.
Bad hair days for sure. And I was thinking of this with the flight attendant, and I got to tell you this.
Oh my gosh, the people who would get their in-flight cocktails.
My flight was being served by an obviously gay flight attendant who seemed to put everyone in a good mood as he served us food and drinks. And as the plane prepared to descend, he came swishing down the aisle and told us, Captain Marvey has asked me to announce that he'll be landing the big scary plane shortly. So lovely, people. If you could just put your trays up, that would be super. Well, on his trip back up the aisle, he noticed this well-dressed and rather Arabic-looking woman hadn't moved a muscle. And he says, Perhaps you didn't hear me over those big brute engines, but I asked you to raise your Tracy poo so the main man can pity-pat us on the ground. She calmly turned her head and said, In my country, I am called a princess, and I take orders from no one. To which, and I swear this is true, of course, the flight attendant replied without missing a beat, Well, sweet cheeks, in my country I'm called a queen, so I outrank you. Tray up, bitch. So what could happen in this country if no gays or lesbians showed up at work? Well, it certainly would be an interesting thing, even though we're only like 8 to 10% of the population, you know?
We're the most interesting 8 to 10%.
Well, my daughter also says the men are the most handsome too. but she's such a lich. Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit about activists. Have you ever thought of yourself as being one, any of you out there in Podland? I think both Lance and I do think of ourselves as being activists, don't you, Lance?
I am. I have something to say on that, but I'll let you continue.
Okay. Well, if you're alive, folks, and active, aren't you an activist?
True.
You know, we've heard about African American activists plus other groups of racial activists. We've heard about the queer activists, the green activists, the tree huggers, yes, environmental activists, etc., etc. We've heard about all those activists who fought for religious freedom. Now, that fight was won a long time ago here in this country. As Americans, we are still, however, in the battle of freedom, liberty, and justice for all. This seems to be a constant here. And it may be a truth for 90% of the population that they have achieved a great deal of the freedom, liberty, and justice that they wish and that is deserved. But there are pockets of the population where this is still not a truism. For instance, I am in that little small 8 to 10% of the population, called the queer population, where we are still not thought of as equals of the 90%. And until there is freedom for all, there really is not freedom, because that word itself includes inclusivity. Freedom is inclusive of everyone. Now, my minority comes in all colors. My little minority of the queer population comes in all colors, shapes, and sizes. sort of like that minority who fought for religious freedom, all shapes and sizes and colors. Now, a religious freedom, which, of course, has to be separate from the state. Our queer minority can be a part of the state affairs without us proselytizing, because we have nothing to proselytize. Whereas,
You mean we're not here to recruit?
yeah, no, but the religious minorities, you see, they can proselytize, and that's probably why they need to be separate from the state. But we can't do it, and I mean, it's just not possible to make anyone something that they're not. All we are is that we just want the freedom to be who we really are and share in the benefits of the state equally. We want the liberty to love others privately and publicly. And because love even goes above faith and hope. And we want the justice deserved by all humans in this land of liberty. So if we are activists for those human rights, as a gay man, I ask all of you listening who are not queer to join us as an ally until we receive our equality that is deserved.
But what is an activist? What if somebody doesn't consider themselves an activist?
You see, I think anyone's an activist if you're alive and breathing and active.
Okay, so define active.
Well, you go to school, you go to churches, you go to functions, that's activities. You go to a vote, that's an activity. It's the part of what an activist does. An activist just lives actively.
So you're making the case that we're all active whether we realize it or not, so we might as well
Yes.
be activists. Got it.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So
That's kind of where I'm coming from, because I know people think of me as an activist because of the things that I do, but in all honesty, I just consider myself a volunteer. I just volunteer for things.
that's what an activist does.
Yeah. One person's activist is another person's volunteer, and vice versa.
I had a neighbor lady say, "Well, you're such an activist, Ace." And I said, "Oh, and you aren't?" "No, I'm not." And I says, "Where did you just come from?" "Oh, I came from the old folks' home. I was there helping and such." And I said, "Oh, you're an activist." And she said, "No, I never thought of myself as that." "Yes," I said, "you are, honey. So you just don't be afraid to be who you are, and that's an activist. You voted also, didn't you?" "Yes." "Okay, you're an activist." So think of yourself as an activist, folks, and maybe you'll realize how much you are actually contributing to our society at large.
I like that definition.
Now,
It's expansive.
should being poor keep someone from doing good deeds or activism? Should being poor?
Not. Absolutely not.
No, but don't you think that poor people, they just don't have enough to even do anything?
Well, what's anything?
That's what I've heard, you know. "Oh, I'm too poor to be an activist." Well,
That's a fallacy.
honey, if you think you're poor, you must be sitting on my lap, because I got the main seat there. Uh-huh. Have you, Lance, let's go from this to another topic here. Have you ever wondered why in the world would a gay or lesbian marry a straight person?
I can think of a couple of reasons.
Okay, why?
One might be because we don't have partner immigration for gay couples in this country. Let's see, what would another
Did you
be?
say partner immigration?
Partner immigration, if you fall in love with somebody and it just so happens that in the view of our government, they're not welcome in this country for whatever reason. Normally, I shouldn't say normally, but in a heterosexual context, you have the right to marry that person, and they have the right to stay, and your relationship is honored. But if it's a same-sex relationship, you kind of don't have that option.
Mm-hmm. And
they could literally be forced to leave.
Okay, and the second thing you were thinking of?
You might marry. Oh gosh, there are all sorts of, I suppose, altruistic reasons. We're talking about a straight person marrying a gay person, right?
Or a gay person marrying a straight person, yeah. Mm-hmm.
To convey the benefits of marriage for some altruistic gain.
Okay. Like I know someone who married a gay man.
Right.
Because she wanted to make sure that he wasn't deported or something like that, and could become a citizen here, etc.
Right. So that's kind of part of the partner immigration thing, except that they're not actually a couple, but it's still to keep someone from having to leave the country.
I told her how dangerous it could be, if they ever found out that that's what they were,
That's right. That's right.
But yeah. And how about
the feds will come after you? I had a friend just tell me that you can definitely flunk the INS screen on that, and they will send you packing.
Oh yeah, yeah. And how about those that let's say there's a very wealthy straight person, and there's let's say it's a lady. But she hasn't been able to find any man, and this young gay man comes along and says, "Hey, I could probably make a lot of money here." There are those too, I think.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All gay people are not saints. Let me tell you that much. Yeah. By the way,
shocker.
By the way, folks, you can contact us now or anytime during the show or after the show at
LundonCalling@gmail.com. It's London, LUNDON.calling@gmail.com. We have an email-in show as opposed to a call-in show.
That is absolutely correct, Lance. You get a star. Yes.
And there are no questions, comments, criticisms, or complaints that are inappropriate for this show. They will all be considered.
That's true. So let's hear from you folks. If you want to say anything to us, we'd love to hear from you. What did you do for Thanksgiving, Lance?
I went to a friend's house. My family, I may have told you, are Christmas tree farmers.
Yes, you did say that.
Yeah, so Thanksgiving Day is a work day. It's the day before the start. Their holiday selling season starts on the same day as Black Friday's a big day for them. It's when they open up the farm, and so Thanksgiving is a mad, crazy dash rush day, and so we always celebrate our family Thanksgiving a little bit early, and then Thanksgiving they're working. I managed to escape having to work, and I get to go and crash someone else's Thanksgiving. What did you do?
I for the first time in many, many years, got a chance to be with my immediate family. Of course, my brother is dead, but my wonderful sister-in-law, I don't know how in the world he ever ended up with somebody as wonderful as she is, but he did. And and my niece and nephews and great niece and great nephews and great great nieces and great great nephews. Oh my gosh, we had a wonderful time in the Camarillo area of Los Angeles. And I traveled over there. I don't like to drive, by the way. And
how did you get there?
I certainly don't like to drive in the city, but I went with my niece. And, it's interesting when you're traveling with a niece or a nephew or one of your younger relatives. You get a chance to learn a lot about them when you're traveling in a car together like that. And I learned that my niece and I actually like a lot of the same things. Crunchy Cheetos, dark chocolate, fluffy boas, and men. Yep.
I was going to say, there's got to be men in there somewhere.
We like a lot of the same things, yes. Oh, this comes to my head now. I wanted to let you and all of the listeners know that when I mentioned on the last show that Harvey Milk was one of my columnists, because I was the managing editor of the publication, I always referred to the columnists as my columnists because they were my columnists. However, my sounds just too egotistical, because people need to know that any managing editor is only as good as their publisher allows them to be. I had a great publisher, and as a result, we had great columnists that we worked with, and Harvey Milk was one of them.
That's awesome. Now, this was when you were in LA, right?
Yes, in LA, yes. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
But when you got a good publisher, you can be a good managing editor. I was thinking about some of the young people that we were able to help, because my publisher said, yes, let's give them all the encouragement, etc., that we can, and maybe they can do little things if they're just beginning to write and things like that. And Randy Schiltz was one of them. He was just I don't know, he was much younger than me, I'm sure, by at least 10 years, I think. But he was getting himself started in writing and such, and he needed to have some encouragement. And so as an managing editor, I was able to give him that encouragement and say, okay, here, Randy, try something about this and do a little bit of article for us or something or other. And so that's what a managing editor has the opportunity to do when they have a good publisher.
That's wonderful. But Randy Schiltz, I'll tell you, you were instrumental in him launching into really quite a great career, because
he did wonderful. Bless his heart. Yes, he did. Oh, there's bless his heart.
He got exactly a bless his heart to Randy Schiltz. He got picked up by the San Francisco Chronicle, and I think they became the first newspaper in the country, first major daily, to have a full-time reporter devoted to the HIV/AIDS issue.
Yeah, he was heavily involved in that, and of course, he did die from AIDS also. In when was it? In the 90s?
94.
94. Yeah, I know it was the 90s. I was so shocked and grieved that when I heard that he had crossed over. Yeah. Because I was in high school when he was born, and I remember that. But I don't
remember him being born.
No, when we talked, and that's why I know he was younger than me. Yeah, it's more than 10 years. Yeah, I don't.
Go ahead.
I don't have the brain that it puts down dates and things like this, like a lot of wonderful people have, but. I remember things that you tie in with, like I remember the fact that we talked, and I remember that he said he was born in early 50s, and that was, and I thought, oh gee, I was in high school, and so I tie in things like that, So what can I say?
I've got some dates for you as it concerns.
Are you pimping for me?
Yes, let me get out my little black book. No, I have some Randy Schiltz dates. It's interesting timing that we should have. I think that we should have Harvey Milk's story breaking on the big screen. Concurrently with the shattering disappointment over Prop 8, and that this should also coincide with World AIDS Day, because let me tell you how I spent my Thanksgiving weekend. I grabbed my copy of Mayor of Castro Street, which is the book that the biography that Randy Schiltz wrote about Harvey Milk. He published that in '82, and read that and realized that what I needed to read immediately following that was his other book, one of his other books,
And the band played on. Yes. Oh, boy.
And I have to say, I highly recommend those two books as a back-to-back read. And then if you're feeling real energetic, you can do Conduct Unbecoming. But what I realized when I finished The Mayor of Castro Street is that, you're reading this book about the first publicly elected, openly gay city official in America who proved that you can be gay and get elected, proved that gay people could exercise political power. And I mean, talk about being the right person in the right place at the right time. It was when gay people were migrating in droves to San Francisco, and they ended up constituting something like one quarter or 1/5 of the city's population. He helped restructure the city's power base so that they could elect basically someone who represented the Castro, and that was him.
And Harvey was a good councilman. He was a good councilman.
He was, and so much got done so quickly, and people saw so much momentum. It's really interesting to read this book and see that in the late 70s in California, people fully expected that things like a national gay civil rights bill would pass Congress, be signed by the president, and be law as we entered the 80s. And so when I finished that book, I realized that I needed to turn immediately to, and the band played on, to see what happened with all of that. Because as we all know, what happened was AIDS put... Go ahead.
Don't tell us what happened, because I got a surprise for you later in the show. Okay?
Okay.
And
then I'll do a couple of dates for you. So Harvey Milk was assassinated in 1978. Randy Schultz published his book about Harvey Milk in 1982. In 1983, he was hired by the Chronicle to be a full-time AIDS reporter, basically. Published in the band played on in 1987. He crossed over in 1994. What other relevant dates are there? It's really interesting, the timeline on all that. Things happened so fast back then, and it's really, really quite something to go back and review it and to see. We have a history. That's really that's been kind of the Lance history lesson. It's been my history lesson over the weekend, is that gay people as a people do have a history, and that's very much history.
That's why I always tell the young people to know their roots as a gay person, in a community that is evolving, etc., and to know what it was like before there was any, quote, gay community.
Well, and it even goes back before Harvey Milk's time.
Oh, for sure.
What he, of course, as a Jew, was very conscious of as all of these things were happening, to him and around him, was the immense gay liberation that was occurring in Berlin right before the Nazis put a stop to all. And of course, that is your window on understanding why it is that we still have the pink triangle as a symbol of our movement, because in the 70s, gay people adopted that triangle as a symbol. It was sort of a never forget, because
it was the symbol. It was the symbol that the Nazis put on the homosexuals in the camps,
who were the second highest population of people executed in the camps after the Jews.
What was it, 600,000, if I remember right, or something like that?
It was definitely in the 100,000s. I mean, the number does pale next to the number of Jews. It was 12 million people total, 6 million Jews, a few 100,000 homosexuals, and then everyone else was a mix of, dissidents,
gypsies,
just anybody they decide, the mentally ill. I mean, this was the whole Aryan purge. They found somewhere in some doctrine somewhere that it was the Aryan way to just purge people who didn't fit the ideal. And of course, two of the tremendous ironies of all that were that Hitler did not look like the classic Aryan ideal that they were promoting, which was the blonde-haired, blue-eyed ideal. And one of his top-ranking officers, at least one, was a homosexual.
Yeah. Oh, it's toast time. Folks,
I'm clicking the ice in my glass.
our show, folks, would not be without you. It is the friends who help make this show a reality. And you are our friends. And each show I have been doing a time zone of the friends that I know have been in contact with me, etc., or I've been in contact with them one way or another, and so they know about the show. They listen either on live or they listen to the podcasts. And we've gone through the Pacific time zone. We went through the Mountain time zone last week, and it is the Central time zone now. And that time zone includes the eastern half of North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska, the western part of Kentucky and Tennessee, plus the tip of Florida. And it includes the states of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Mississippi, and Alabama. This is the Central time zone. And so I'm going to now toast. Where is my glass? And you got your glass? Let us clink. Clink. Yeah. Here's to all of you in this area. Matt Samp in Omaha, Nebraska. Oh, young Matt is doing such a wonderful job there as an activist. And I tell you, I'm just so proud of him. He is, even though he is a Democrat, he is doing a great job because Democrats Democrats can do great jobs, And
one of them is your president-elect, in fact.
Oh yes, this is true. But Matt Samp in Omaha, Florentine Blue Thunder in Nebraska. Florentine is one of the wonderful members of the Lower Brule. It's not the Lower Brule, the Rosebud tribe down there, and has the opening Sundance there. Joseph Marino, also in Nebraska, a marvelous computer nerd. Okay, Frances Lynn, she has a show with South Dakota Public Broadcasting. Angie Buell, B-U-H-L. She's with NARAL, Pro-Choice, South Dakota. David Fisher, a nurse and very active person in the South Dakota area, along with Lawrence Novotny as campus advisor to the South Dakota State University Gay Straight Alliance. Clarence Sky, who is the creator and director of the United Sioux Tribal Development Corporation back there. Keisha Lester, I worked with her at one time. Carl Nilsson, an old high school mate up in Minnesota. Marsha LeBeau, Doug Henry, now they're both in South Dakota. Derek, I can never pronounce his last name correctly. It's spelled R-E-H-U-R-E-K, Rurik, at South Dakota State. Kyle Adjutant with Equality South Dakota. And, I don't mention my relatives' names usually because I've got relatives in each of the time zones and a lot of them. But I'm going to mention one that I am so proud of. Her name is Janelle O'Connor. She ran on the Democratic ticket for District 31 state representative back there in South Dakota. She didn't make it, but I'm proud that she had the balls, or not the balls because she doesn't have balls, but she has eggs, to run and to try to do something as an activist. And she's got a family, she's a grandma and everything. And I'm real proud of her. Oh, also, Greg Kniffen back there in South Dakota, the first open gay to run for state representative. He also didn't win, but I'm very proud of him. Great young man. Amber Braithwaite in Minnesota, Mark Cuban, the owner of the Mavericks down in Dallas. Gary Davis in South Dakota, who was regular on the Gene Lundon show, which where we entertained for 7 years the men going to and coming home from Vietnam. And Gary is back there and now in South Dakota. And let's see, we've got Cindy Duckett, the CEO of Children First in Kansas. Maureen Draws, South Dakota's State Tourism Department. Ann and Brian Ducote in Amarillo, Texas. Ann is a phenomenal teacher. Oh my gosh. She was once one of my roommates. By the way, I've had a lot of roommates over the years since my divorce and since Patrick died. And yes, I've had men and women that we've lived in the same house together. Anne was one of them, and she is just a brilliant teacher of brilliant children down there. Joe Edelin is with the ID Weeks Library at South Dakota State University. Adrienne Esteen and Jerry down in Louisiana. They were formerly employed with Disney, and they're retired now, but they're listening in. Anna Guerrero, she's with the staff at the University of Wisconsin Parkside, directing the LGBT work there in Kenosha, Wisconsin. She's my adopted granddaughter. And so I'm sure she's listening if she's not snowed in back there. And Jean and Glenda Hill in Sioux City, Iowa, who have take care of the PFLAG back there. Jake Duckett in Kansas. Oh, Jake, I'm so proud of you. He just won the 11th annual 2008 NGA Natural Diamond Classic Bodybuilding.
Whoa.
He is a champion. I'm just so proud of him. Billy Kellogg in Missouri also. Kevin McCarthy up at Dolly State in Minnesota. Shirley Morrison down in Texas. Found out that we actually were related when we started going back into the family tree. We have bastards in our families, and one of those we ended up being related, which was quite a surprise. Mike Newbecker, the regional director for PFLAG up in his area in Michigan, and he is a great comedian. Folks, if you ever get a chance to hear Mike Newbecker, take advantage of it. Deb Price, the wonderful columnist for the Detroit paper in Michigan. Stacy Shupman at Iowa State, another wonderful gal. Dr. Ronald Spar at the University of Memphis, Tennessee. He's professor and chair of the Department of Finance there. Gabe Golden, who is with the Bloomington Playwrights Organization. Ron Bowles with the Author House Publishing Company. Justin B. up in Kalamazoo. I love that name. Hi, Justin B. How are you doing? Doug Bowder, and he is the coordinator of the LGBT staff at the Indiana University. Emily Blake, Iowa State and Colgate LGBT coordinators. Kyle Bostwick, field organizer for Obama and works for his state representative Andrew Meissner in Lansing, Michigan. Benson Brazer, my big old BB up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Hi, Ben. Big Ben. Frank Zarelli with the Metropolitan Community Church. I think Frank said he is now down in Texas. Susan Clementi. Oh, my beautiful red-headed Susan Clementi. She owns Susie Q's Ultimate House Cleaning in Warren, Ohio. Hi, Susie. Sam Hodge, a human rights activist. He is at Truman State, and he'll be going on to Drake University pretty soon. Kathleen McLaughlin. She's on the staff at Columbia College in Chi-Town, Chicago. She's 35 today. Happy birthday, Kathleen, you wild woman. Phil my fellow teacher of literature out down in Champaign, Illinois, Liz Trussler in Cincinnati, a wonderful, wonderful gal involved in social work and psychology, who has the same birthday as my mother had and as my sister-in-law Anita has, May 26th. Amanda Suckow, she's a music teacher in Milwaukee now, and Jackie Weller, who is on the staff at Central Michigan University. Then there's Jerry Newberry in Kansas City, Missouri, the Director of Communication and Public Affairs for the Veterans of Foreign Wars. He has an online thing called thenationaldefense.com. Now, folks, check it out. The National Defense is the Veterans of Foreign Wars military-oriented talk radio program, and it is the only nationally syndicated talk show designed around and for the men and women serving in today's military forces, as well as America's veterans. Jerry is doing a phenomenal job. And folks, I might as well give a plug for my website, which is www.vietnamgenelondonshow.com. That tells about my memories of what we did with the shows during those years, 7 years and 3 months during the Vietnam area. And Jackie Weller up at CMU reminds me of all my wonderful friends there at CMU. So I got to give a shout out. This is all of the GLBT and Allies group that has just become such a wonderful part of my life. Chris Alger, Donnie Alverson, Asante Andrich, Joe Bailey, Aaron Bielik, Justin Burnham, Will Calhoun, hi Big Will, Christine Candelaria, Matthew Darling, hi darling, Camilla Dawkins, Ben Dotson, Trisha G., Jason Philip Gagnon, Cyrus Garal, Mark Hageman, who just had his 21st birthday a little bit ago, Aaron Herbst, Eric Hess, Bridget Kennedy, Matt Kessler. Matt, he is boyfriend of, I'm sorry, I had a little gas. Matt Kessler is the boyfriend of Christine Candelaria. Lucky Matt. Jonathan Knapp, Kat LeBeau. Don't you love that name, Lance? Kat LeBeau. Oh,
Kat LeBeau.
Amber Lanke, Kent Malash, Eric Miller, Jeremy Moffat, Adam Prescott, Ariel Robinson, Nicole Smith. Thank you, Nicole, for being in my life. And Jamie Teal, I call her Jama. Samantha Underwood, Stephen Warwick, and Bridget Wynn. All of you wonderful young people up there at Central Michigan University. By the way, gang, I tell you, I don't know how you do it these days, because it is rough times for any of you that are in any college or university, no matter where you are in the country today. These are rough times for you guys, and I'm just so proud of how you can actually do it. It was actually a lot easier, I think, in my day. I had to pay $4,000. Wow, $4,000, that's what you pay for your breakfast and books in college these days. So you know that you just got to hang in there tough and, take advantage of every possible way that you can to help yourself get through your educational years in formal education. You got a lot of us out here that are pulling for you, and I'm hoping that in our new years with the new president that there'll be something that can certainly help in the education realm, because man, without an educated populace, we're in the shithole. It's just so important. Don't you think so, Lance?
Amen, brother.
Did you hear about the elephant and the camel?
No, but I have a feeling I'm about to.
The elephant asked the camel, "Why are your breasts on your back?"
Oh, God.
And the camel says, "Well, I think that's a strange question coming from somebody whose dick is on his face."
Oh, no. Oh, no. With that, we have hit the valley for this show. Or no, maybe there's another valley yet to come.
Oh, there got to be a few valleys in life. Otherwise, it'd be pretty boring. As I mentioned last week, I think it was, the holidays can be really tough for people. For anyone who may have lost a loved one or mate, a parent and such during these times, man, holidays suck, you know? And I've told you this before, and I'll tell you again and probably again because I do it over and over. Write your feelings down. It is therapy for you to write your feelings down. Diary or whatever you want to call it. Poetry, write poems, whatever. But do it because it helps you. They say that after a mate dies, it takes approximately half of the years you spent together to get over your heavy grief. Let's say your folks were together 50 years and one of them passes on. That person that's left, he or she has a good 25 years of what is called grief in the field of psychology to deal with. Now, for me, after Patrick crossed over, it went a little longer than the half of the time we were together, but it took me about 7 years to actually finally come out of the grief period. I can even remember 5 years later when I walked into a restaurant and over the music playing, they were playing our song, and I burst into tears, and I had to leave. So it just is something that goes on, and it was, of course, in the month of December. We were married, Patrick and I were married in August of '78, and he crossed over in December '89. So, we were together for quite a number of years. I couldn't help but think because every December, by the way, next show will be the anniversary of his death. I was thinking about him and my mother. Oh, my dear mother, bless her heart. She had a hard time accepting the fact. She had a hard time accepting the fact that her son was a homosexual. But she tried, and she even lived with Patrick and myself, for a while. And I'm having a good memory of her and Patrick in the kitchen, and I'm sitting in the other room, and I hear Patrick say, "I'm your son-in-law, Amy." And I heard my mother say, "You're not my son-in-law. I don't have a daughter."
Nice.
And then I heard her say, "I might think of you like a grandson." So nice. They had their times together.
So
okay,
if our next show is on December 10th, which is the day without gays, are we supposed to call in sick to the show and not have it?
I'll slap your face.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I suppose
this is for people who get paid. This is for people who get paid. You and I are not getting paid.
We got a PayPal donation. We got paid.
Yes, we do. We do have a PayPal donation, but it's got to be used before any money comes in. And when the money comes in, it's got to go to pay all the back bills.
There you go.
Yeah. So
now what we could do is we could either pre-record the show or we could do the live broadcast on a different night.
It's possible. Yes, it's possible.
Oh, I'm just giving you shit. Hey, by the way, speaking of a day without gays, for the benefit of our listeners, I would just like to put out a URL. There's a website that you can refer to. It's easy. It's daywithoutagay.org. There's also a Facebook group, but the website's out there, and it's apparently an offshoot of this Join the Impact thing. And I think I first saw Join the Impact as part of I don't know how long they've been around, but they were also part of the reaction to Prop 8 passing. So they're out there doing their thing, and they've given us the day without a gay. I will say, and I may have electronic eggs thrown at me through the webosphere for saying the podcastosphere for saying this, but I personally, I don't know that I'm going to call in gay next Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Because I am completely out to my employer. It's simply not a factor. And as we've discussed on this show, I think in the past, I have kind of a unique work situation. It's not the typical.
Yes,
it's not what most.
You've got a good thing going there. For all of you folks in the closet out there, you call in gay on that day. And
it's easy. Actually, what they're saying, they don't really spell it out. But I remember back in the 90s, there was the joke that went around that said, call in gay. And when they ask you, what do you mean you're calling in gay? What is that? You say, well, homosexuality is apparently a sickness or a disease. So I'm calling in sick. I'm calling in gay. Did you ever hear that? I remember hearing that.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. Yes. I'd forgotten it, but I remember hearing it.
All in gay.
I think there's a lot of symbolism that goes with this. That just to let the people know that are in the businesses that they've got a lot of gay people working for them.
There will be no hair getting done. There will be no window treatments. There will be no. And these are just the stereotypical.
My nails. I chipped my nail. What am I going to do?
There will be no floristry. There will be no catering. There will be no. You know what? There will be no food. Period. Unless you want to go to the grocery store. There will be no restaurant food. There will be no Broadway. There will be a big hole in entertainment. They might as well the network should just go dark for the day.
Yeah. Well, Lance, you're called my co-host, but in my mind, I am your co-host also.
How's that possible?
It just works that way. And since there has to be a figurehead and I'm in that position, it also falls on my shoulders to give you some directions and orders.
Oh, dear.
And so, probably because of my background in the field of
be careful, I'll call in gay next week.
Because of my in the background in the field of education, I'm going to ask you now, surprise, surprise, to create something for our show. Now, I figure since Oprah has one, why can't we also have a Lundon Calling book club? And I'm going to ask you to work on creating a book club for the show, and then
recommended reading list.
Yeah, and when we get it started, then you can tell about all these about the book that you were talking about earlier and things like that.
Right, I love it. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, I was thinking it would be neat to have, because now I'm on this gay history kick, and I was thinking, it'd be neat to have a top 10 list of the best gay history tomes. Like, remember, but there's so much. There's Edmund White, not literally history, because some of that is sort of fictionalized, just slices of life. What was it like?
Maybe add that into the book club idea. Hey, you'll have to create something. Yes. Hey,
I'm creating as we speak. I'm multitasking.
Yes, you are. Have you ever heard this one? Straight women looking for a hubby think all the good-looking ones are either married or gay. Have you ever heard anyone say that?
Oh, gosh, no, not ever.
What?
No.
You have? Oh, you have too. You lie through your teeth.
I do.
Yes, I've heard so many women say, oh, all the good-looking ones are either married or gay, They
live with their mothers.
Or live with their mothers. Well, I have also heard this. I've heard straight men who say they like the idea of marrying an ugly or an obese woman.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because, and I tried to find out why, because they think she will never cheat on them because no one will hit up on her.
Fallacy.
What a creep. But there are men out there who believe this, evidently. I think they're very, very insecure men to do such a that if there is such a thing as sin, that should be sinful, I swear. Anyway,
Well, to make a challenge like that to the universe is to invite the thing that you want the least to happen to actually happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
I say the best plan of action is to be somebody that that your partner wouldn't want to cheat on.
Yeah.
Call me crazy. Call me old-fashioned.
Well, when I was married in the closet to my ex-wife, I had men say, doesn't it bother you to be married to one of the most beautiful women in the business, And I had no compunctions in saying, absolutely not, because we didn't cheat on each other, We trusted each other, etc. She got the raw end of the deal with me ending up, coming out of the closet and such. But no,
Well, what makes that
when you are,
the deal? I mean, you were. I'm just guessing you were a good husband.
I hope I was.
I'm sure you were.
She was probably the most wonderful woman that any straight man could ever want, And so that's the way it goes. Well, I'm going to do a high five now to those who are fighting obesity, because I know some folks think I'm really too hard on folks regarding being overweight. But there is a reason for me being this way.
Well, you're speaking as someone who's been there, so that's okay.
Well, I haven't been overweight, but I have so many relatives and so many friends. And maybe I think that hard love is the only way to sometimes, get through a person's barricades that you set up in life. And because I have so many obese friends and such, my heart absolutely aches and breaks inside of me for them, because I know they are hurting. They maybe don't show it, ha ha ha. The gay people the fat people are supposed to be happy-go-lucky. Well, I know they're hurting. They hurt physically. They hurt emotionally. They've got to be mentally frustrated because of all the stupid dieting things, which really suck, And I think that they hurt spiritually also. So even though I may be a little hard on you, if you are overweight and listening in out there, believe me, I am hurting inside for you, because you have got to somehow or other get a hold of that brain of yours and say, okay, I can do it. I can help myself, because no one else is really going to help you, kiddo. You know that. And do it. You may try this and try that. Well, don't worry about trying, because that's what we got to do. And if you're just the opposite of being overweight and you're anorexic, it's the same problem. You've got to try, So anyway, I love you. And I may be a little hard on you, but it's because of love, unfortunately, for me. Do you have a cell phone, Lance?
I do. Do you?
What? No.
Yeah. I knew you didn't. That was a rhetorical question.
Oh, you knew I didn't. Well, you're bad. I did try one, though. And those damn things are so small that when I went to use it, I dialed 2 numbers simultaneously. I have big hands, and you know what that means.
Oh, dear.
I
thought it was big feet.
Well, no, my feet are normal size, but my hands are very large. And that means I just have to grow long, pointed fingernails to dial the damn cell phones.
It also means you can't be my
maybe
dentist.
they'll make a cell phone for real men, one day anyway. And what is this business of people talking on their phone when they are driving a car? Can you believe this?
Yeah, the fact that hasn't been universally outlawed just kills me. It's so dangerous.
You got to be totally crazy.
Yeah,
driving in any large city these days is like really taking your own life in your own hands,
At least even a state that hasn't banned cell phone usage. There are states. I know New York State is one of them.
Where it's banned?
Oh yeah, they banned it years ago.
Well, I think it's a good idea. A number of years ago, Patrick and I were driving up Laurel Canyon Boulevard, or whatever it is, in Los Angeles, and the actress, I think she's also a princess, Catherine Oxenberg. Do you know that name?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, she was driving along in her little Mercedes, and back then she was talking on, it was a rather large phone that they had back in those days, talking on one of those handheld phones from that era. And she nearly caused us to have an accident.
Of course.
Well, my Patrick was Irish and Mexican, and he had a little temper, I swear. And he was so pissed at her that he almost then ran her off the road. And as we got up alongside of her, she learned definitely what the middle finger meant, along with, "You stupid bitch," Yeah. And Miss Oxenberg thought that maybe she could rule the world. I don't know. We're living in a time. Yes, we're living in a time of fast everything, and we're going nowhere fast, thinking we are going to get there sooner. So we talk on phones while we drive. Duh! What is going on in people's minds? Anyway,
now I think we have to have a little Lundon Calling show that you've been waiting for. Moment of truth here, and full disclosure, you and I have had wonderful phone conversations while I was driving. You know that.
But you have one of those ear things, don't you?
Okay, that's what I was looking for. I mean, That's my thing. I really, I would say about 99.44% of the time, if I am on the phone in the car, the earbud is in place. And the other thing is, usually I wait for a nice long highway road trip. And, we have to confess that's how that was the genesis of this show. We realized that we had such a good rapport, such a good oral relationship that we would be remiss to deny.
Well, I have a number
pleasure
of
of listening in on our weekly conversation.
Yeah, I have a number of friends who have those ear things, and that's sort of just like talking to somebody in the car with you, and you could that.
Well, I'm not even going to go that far. I can't say for sure, but I'll bet you there's a study out there that shows that people are still a little bit more distracted when they're on the phone with one of those earpieces than they would be if they had a passenger.
Well, you might be correct. Folks, you can email in your comments and such at,
Lundon.calling at gmail.com. LUNDON.calling@gmail.com. Oh, and you know what? We should put in a plug for the website as well. The website to which I have added what up to now has been my monthly blog. Of course, I'll be working on that little issue. But it's Lundon-calling.net. So that's LUNDON-calling.net.
Yes.
And of course, my Thanksgiving blog, which happens to be written not only on Thanksgiving, but on the 30th anniversary of Harvey Milk's assassination, was encouraging people to, as you say, did you read my blog, Ace? Because I'll tell you, started off the show.
I certainly did. I read your blog. I read everything that goes onto that site, believe me.
Wonderful. Because the blog is basically about activism. It's about, putting your big girl panties on and getting out there and fighting for what's right. That's if everybody's going to see Milk and talking about the movie and how great it is, but I really hope that what they take home from it is kind of the twin lessons of his life story, which are be out, and be active and make a difference.
It's I'm reminded.
I mean, the man ran for office 4 times before he won. He lost his first 3 campaigns. I mean, history is littered with the examples of people who lost.
That is why quitters never win and winners never quit. You just keep going. I'm just reminded of what Samuel Adams said.
Beer's delicious?
I didn't have a feeling of camaraderie with Samuel Adams until after I came out of the closet and such. But since then I have, because I realized.
Was he one of us?
No, he wasn't a closet case, but
we're not closet cases.
He grew up in a very wealthy home. His dad was the beer baron, that's why we got Samuel Adams beer today. But he also was really an activist. And when I came out of my closet and began to be involved with gay rights and things like that, and Adams, even though he grew up in a wealthy home, he was not good at business.
You just slipped and said a gay home when you meant wealthy.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
I'll cut my tongue off. Anyway, he wasn't good in business, and he ended up actually being quite poor, just like me. After the divorce and everything, you better believe you're poor. And so I felt a kinship with him. And he was a tireless person with regard to being. He helped on getting the Boston Tea Party going and things like that. And he was involved in politics, and he was better in politics than he was in business, that's for sure. But he once said, "It does not require a majority to prevail." I think, isn't that an interesting quote? But rather an irate, tireless minority,
armed to the teeth with semi-automatic rifles,
keen to set brush fires in people's minds.
Oh, I like it.
It does not require a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen to set brush fires in people's minds. And I've said, thank you, Samuel Adams, over and over so many years that have since I came to really know him not in a physical sense. So, folks,
sounds like he was an early activist.
It sounds like, I better repeat, it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. So think about the things that we're saying, folks. Think about them. And I don't know if we have any listeners in St. Louis or not, but there's a man there who is urging the citizens to buy guns to protect their lives and property because crime is so high in St. Louis. Like I say, I don't know if we have any listeners in St. Louis or not. I do know, by the way, Lance, there have been a few thousand hits on our website. Isn't that something?
That's wonderful.
Thank you, folks, for checking in.
They must have been lost.
That's all right. So,
we're a rest stop on the information superhighway.
So after hearing about that, I thought, he's urging the citizens to buy guns to protect their lives and property. And I'm going to ask you to do something now, Lance. I want you to find out.
I am not going to undress on air.
No, you better not, because it would just shock me to no end. You know that. And I want you to find that Second Amendment thing. Anyway, after, and then I'll ask you to talk about it. Let me tell you this first. You're sound asleep when you hear a thump outside your bedroom door. Half awake and nearly paralyzed with fear, you hear muffled whispers. At least 2 people have broken into your house and are moving your way. With your heart pumping, you reach down beside your bed and pick up your shotgun. You rack a shell into the chamber, then inch toward the door and open it. In the darkness, you make out 2 shadows. One holds something that looks like a crowbar, and when that intruder brandishes it as if to strike you, you raise the shotgun and fire. The blast knocks both of the thugs to the floor. One writhes and screams while the second man crawls to the front door and lurches outside. As you pick up the telephone to call the police, you know you're in trouble. Now, this was written by someone from another country. In your country, most guns were outlawed years before, and the few that are privately owned are so stringently regulated as to make them useless. Your gun was never registered, this man who used the shotgun. Police arrive and inform you that the second burglar has died. They arrest you for first-degree murder and illegal possession of a firearm. When you talk to your attorney, he tells you not to worry. Authorities will probably plead the case down to manslaughter. And you ask, what kind of a sentence will I get? Oh, only 10 to 12 years, he replies, as if that's nothing. Behave yourself, and you'll be out in 7. The next day, the shooting is the lead story in the local newspaper. Somehow, you're portrayed as an eccentric vigilante, while the 2 men you shot are represented as choir boys. Their friends and relatives can't find an unkind word to say about them, and buried deep down in the article, authorities acknowledge that both victims have been arrested numerous times. But the next day's headline says it all. Lovable rogue son didn't deserve to die. The thieves have been transformed from career criminals into Robin Hood-type pranksters. And as the day wears on, the story takes wings. The national media pick it up, then the international media. The surviving burglar has become a folk hero. Your attorney says the thief is preparing to sue you, and he'll probably win. The media publishes reports that your home has been burglarized several times in the past, and that you've been critical of the local police for their lack of effort in apprehending the suspects. And after the last break-in, you told your neighbor that you would be prepared next time. The district attorney uses this to allege that you were lying in wait for the burglars. A few months later, you go to trial. The charges hadn't been reduced, as your lawyer had so confidently predicted. When you take the stand, your anger at the injustice of it all actually works against you. The prosecutors paint a picture of you as a mean, vengeful man, and it doesn't take long for the jury to convict you of all charges. The judge sentences you to life in prison. Would you tell me what the Second Amendment says, Lance?
It says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Aha. Well, I grew up on a farm in South Dakota. We had guns. I grew up with guns. I was taught as a child how to use the guns, how to care for them, etc. My kids, however, are very anti-gun. I tried to teach them how to use them, the rifle and the shotguns, when they were younger. But they really have a fear of guns. They grew up in the city. City folks and country folks are very different in their beliefs with regard to gun ownership, I have found. What about you?
Yeah, I can see that. It's kind of like the difference between the people who order their steaks rare and those who order them medium. City folks like them rare, country folks don't.
Yeah, boy. Well, it's something we need to think about. It's like Aristotle said,
It is the mark of an educated mind.
Mm-hmm. To be able to entertain a thought without accepting it if you don't want to. Now let me tell you about a case that really happened. On August 22nd, 1999, Tony Martin of Emneth, Norfolk, England, killed one burglar and wounded a second. In April 2000, he was convicted and is now serving a life term. How did it become a crime to defend one's own life in the once great British Empire? It started with the Pistols Act of 1903. This seemingly reasonable law forbade selling pistols to minors or felons and established that handgun sales were to be made only to those who had a license. Then the Firearms Act of 1920 expanded licensing to include not only handguns but all firearms except shotguns. Later laws in 1953 and 67 outlawed the carrying of any weapon by private citizens and mandated the registration of all shotguns. Momentum for total handgun confiscation began in earnest after the Hungerford mass shooting in 1987. Michael Ryan, a mentally disturbed man with a Kalashnikov rifle and AK-47, walked down the streets shooting everyone he saw, and when the smoke cleared, 17 people were dead. The British public, already desensitized by 80 years of gun control, demanded even tougher restrictions. The seizure of all privately owned handguns was the objective, even though Ryan used a rifle. 9 years later, at Dublin, Scotland, Thomas Hamilton used a semi-automatic weapon to murder 16 children and a teacher at a public school. For many years, the media had portrayed all gun owners as mentally unstable, or worse, criminals. Now the press had a real kook with which to beat up law-abiding gun owners. Day after day, week after week, the media gave up all pretense of objectivity and demanded a total ban on all handguns. The Dublin inquiry, a few months later, sealed the fate of few sidearms still owned by private citizens. During the years in which the British government incrementally took away most gun rights, the notion that a citizen had the right to armed self-defense came to be seen as vigilantism. Authorities refused to grant gun license to people who were threatened, claiming that self-defense was no longer considered a reason to own a gun. Citizens who shot burglars or robbers or rapists were charged, while the real criminals were released. Indeed, after the Martin shooting, a police spokesman was quoted as saying, "We cannot have people take the law into their own hands." All of Martin's neighbors had been robbed numerous times, and several elderly people were severely injured in beatings by young thugs who had no fear of consequences. Martin himself, a collector of antiques, had seen most of his collection trashed or stolen by burglars. And when the Dublin inquiry, that's the newspaper, ended, that's not the newspaper, they call it the Dublin inquiry, ended, citizens who owned handguns were given 3 months to turn them over to local authorities. Being good British subjects, most people obeyed the law. The few who didn't were visited by police and threatened with 10-year prison sentences if they didn't comply. Police later bragged that they had taken nearly 200,000 handguns from private citizens. And how did the authorities know who had the handguns? The handguns had been registered and licensed, kind of like cars.
Wow.
Kind of like cars. Does this sound familiar?
Are they going to take the cars away?
Maybe this is why our founding fathers put the Second Amendment in our Constitution. Think about it.
Well, here's the $1 million question. So what's the gay angle on all this?
What's the what?
The gay angle.
The gay angle?
I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, well, you must be. You must be. Yeah.
So what are you lobbying for?
Well, I'm not. I'm just tossing something out there. You don't have to agree, but think about it. Make up your mind, but look at all sides. I have a lot of friends who are very anti-gun. They wouldn't have a gun any place in their house or near them, etc. But
yeah, that's pretty much where I am with it. I stop at severely restricting other people's rights. We've talked about this before. I could see just a lot of it should be a privilege, not a right. I think that's probably where we've gotten a little off track, and of course we have that pesky little amendment to help us get off track with it. As with so many things in this country, it is well. And you know what? Great Britain is a great example. Driving is a great example. Driving, in this country, I think our perspective on driving is that it's more of a right than a privilege. And I know from having lived in Europe and sort of seeing their perspective on it, driving there is definitely a privilege. Now, of course, there are other things that factor into it. You have more transportation options. They have, healthier public transportation systems, et cetera. But they do some interesting things with that being a privilege rather than a right. For instance, I was told by one of my British friends that it is strictly forbidden in Britain while driving, not only to be on the phone, but the car is also not a place to be smoking, and we know how much the British love to smoke. Not a place for smoking, not a place for drinking, not a place for eating. Apparently, these are pretty high-grade offenses. I remember my friends telling me that in, I think, Germany and England, this is the case. You really can't go around with your headlights kind of not focused properly. You can get nailed for that. You can get nailed for having been in an accident and your taillight's busted or some other such thing. You'll get pulled over and told you need to report to the police station in a week and show us that you've gotten that fixed. In other words, the whole thing is a privilege, not a right. So I think that's about where I am with gun ownership. It doesn't need to be banned, but it could be healthily regulated, not from the perspective of making it a big burden on people, but just making sure that people are responsible about it.
Well, if they have a gun, they better learn how to use it. That's for sure.
They should be trained in how to use it, how to take care of it. They should. I think, need to demonstrate at least annually that they know how to maintain it and keep it clean. We hear all the stories about old rusty guns that people don't realize have rounds in them. What's wrong with a little? We make people go through a class to learn how to operate a motor vehicle, which is a big dangerous weapon if used improperly. Why can't we have gun owner education classes where it's like, all right, well, let's talk about, some basics like how do you secure a weapon in your home? How should it be locked up? How should it be kept out of the wrong hands? All that good stuff.
Yeah. I think Vice President Cheney could have had a lesson so he wouldn't have shot his friend.
He deserves a Lundon Calling, bless his heart.
Yes, bless your heart, Vice President Cheney. You screwed up. Good time, big time.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, folks, you make up your mind. Just know that you've got something to think about. And when things come up to vote, remember some of these things. Remember how the rights were taken away from people. And what has happened as a result? Good people are going to prison for protecting themselves, you know? So think about it. Talk to your politicians in local areas, in state, and in the federal. And don't be afraid to let them know what you think. They are our servants. And don't be afraid to let them know that. You know?
Yeah, they tend to forget that sometimes, just as we do, huh?
Yes.
Part of that activist thing.
Mm-hmm.
I always say whenever I'm doing one of my volunteer things and we're talking about lobbying and talking to your elected officials, I always like to mention that one of the mistakes you can easily make when you're talking about your elected officials is you can make the mistaken assumption that they're actually smarter than you are.
Yeah. Or
you know, I mean, you talk about, you sit with a group of people and you talk about, well, what are some of people's, barriers? What are some of the things that keep them from interacting with their elected officials? And I always make a point of piping up somewhat rhetorically and saying, we assume that they're smarter than they are, or we assume that they're smarter than we are.
It's like I learned one thing for sure in my 30, 40 plus years in Hollywood, in the entertainment industry. Everyone, normal people, I don't know what normal people means, but, Joe and Nancy Smith out there, they meet someone like Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie, and they say, "Oh, I can't even talk. I'm so," they are so intimidated by celebrity.
Yeah, they put their pants on one leg at a time like the rest of us.
Absolutely. They take a shit, they pee, they do a fart, and they do everything just like we do. So they are a celebrity. Do not ever allow yourself to think less of yourself than you are, because you are equal to any of those big names in either the entertainment industry or in the political field or in the business world. We are the same. And there are those that think their poop doesn't stink, but believe me, it does. It does. And so sometimes they have to be brought down a notch, like old Frank Sinatra was many years ago. Anyway, I like religious jokes. Well, it's after this serious conversation that we've been having, I think it's time for a little religious humor. The 7 dwarfs went to the Vatican. And because they are the 7 dwarfs, they are immediately ushered in to see the Pope. Grumpy leads the pack. Grumpy, my son, says the Pope, "What can I do for you?" Grumpy asks, "Excuse me, Your Excellency, but are there any dwarf nuns in Rome?" Well, the Pope wrinkles his brow at this odd question, thinks for a moment, and answers, "No, Grumpy, there are no dwarf nuns in Rome." Well, in the background, a few of the dwarfs start giggling. Grumpy turns around and glares at them and silences them. Grumpy turns back and says, "Your worship, are there any dwarf nuns in all of Europe?" Well, the Pope, now puzzled, again thinks for a moment and then answers, "No, Grumpy, there are no dwarf nuns in Europe." And this time all of the other dwarfs burst into laughter. And once again Grumpy turns around and silences them with an angry glare. And he turns back and says, "Mr. Pope, are there any dwarf nuns anywhere in the world?" The Pope, really confused by the question, says, "I'm sorry, my son, but there are no dwarf nuns anywhere in the world." Well, the other dwarfs collapse in a heap, rolling and laughing, pounding the floor, tears rolling down their cheeks, and they begin chanting, "Grumpy screwed a penguin, Grumpy screwed a penguin." Poor little Grumpy. Poor little Grumpy. And then there was this little boy got on the bus and sat next to a man reading a book and noticed the man had his collar on backwards. The little boy asked why he wore his collar backwards. The man, who was a priest, said, "I am a father." The little boy replied, "My dad doesn't wear his collar like that." The priest looked up from his book and answered, "I am the father of many." The boy said, My dad has 4 boys and 4 girls and 2 grandchildren, and he doesn't wear his collar that way." Well, the priest was beginning to get a little impatient and said, "I am the father of hundreds," and went back to reading his book. The little boy sat quietly for a moment thinking, and then leaned over and said, "Maybe you should use a condom and wear your pants backwards instead of your collar."
Oh, Ace.
Dear. And how about this one? You're a good old Southern boy. Southerners can be so polite. And even if you've never lived in the South, folks, I think you might enjoy this. This is the Atlanta Air Traffic Control. And Atlanta ATC Tower to Saudi Air 511. You are cleared to land eastbound on runway 9R. Thank you, Atlanta ATC. Acknowledge cleared to land on Infidels runway 9R. Allah be praised. Atlanta ATC Tower to Iran Air 711. You are cleared to land westbound on runway 9R. Thank you, Atlanta ATC. We are cleared to land on Infidels runway 9R. Allah is great. There's a pause. There's a pause. And then, Atlanta ATC. Go ahead, Saudi Air 511. You've cleared both our aircrafts for the same runway, going in opposite directions. We're on a collision course. Instructions, please. Well, bless your heart and praise Jesus. You all be careful now and tell Allah hey from us.
Ace, that's terrible.
I know, but I say this because of all the saber rattling that's going on in Iran these days, and the fact
gosh, you're inviting a fatwa and a jihad against our gun-toting anti-Islam gay show. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
What's
but
next?
Do you know why I'm saying this? Because there are doctors today in the United States, and there are hospitals today in the United States who are refusing to give medical service to people if it goes against the doctor's or the hospital's theology.
What in the world does that mean?
That means that if a woman comes in and she's been raped or something, and she goes to the doctor and needs to have it taken care of, and the doctor says, "I'm sorry, it is against my moral inside of me, and my church does not want me to be involved with taking the life of your unborn child. I cannot help you."
Well, then, you know what? Go be a veterinarian.
Sometimes I think it's a good idea if we kept religion separate from business, unless religion is your business, like in the Saudi Air situation. Bless your hearts.
Amen.
So, just another thing to think of, folks. Yes, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess it's time to look at some odd myths. That's MYTHS. It's hard for me to say the word because of my false teeth. Odd myths. Okay, let's call them they are queer myths. They're not odd, they're queer. And I'll have to get your advice, Lance. Lesbians wear engineer boots and ride motorcycles.
I'd say that's true.
Ah. There.
Was that the wrong answer? I'm sorry.
That was the wrong answer. That's a myth. If that's true, I've got to tell my little heterosexual niece that she's a lesbian because she wears engineer boots and rides motorcycles. Huh?
Now, Ace, where did you take logic classes? A square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square.
I'm going to send the what did those motorcycle boys out after you down there? Boy.
Sounds
because they got their motorcycle mamas that are definitely not lesbians.
Well, I mean, think about what you just said. Lesbians wear blankety blankety blank. Yeah, some of them do.
Yeah, some do. I even used to wear.
That doesn't mean that somebody who wears those things is a lesbian. So
I used to wear engineer boots, and I rode motorcycle. Did that make me a lesbian? No. I came close, but not quite.
What does that mean? What does that? No, you're not getting away with that one.
Okay.
Explain yourself.
Well, if lesbians wear engineer boots and ride motorcycles, if that's one of the myths that we hear, and if that's a truth, then I should have been a lesbian because I wore rode motorcycles and wore engineer boots. So we know it's a myth. It is a queer myth. If a man lisps, is he queer?
Now, those aren't just queer myths. Those are just human myths because straight people are just as guilty.
Okay. So if a man lisps, he's a queer. That's a myth. Because a straight person can also lisp. And they're not queer.
Okay. So is this the theater of the obvious portion of the show?
I suppose so, if it's obvious to you. Lesbians do not wear makeup or wear dresses. Is that a myth? You better believe it is. Some of the hottest looking women that I've seen are lesbian, and they wear dresses, they wear makeup. Not that you have to wear dresses or makeup to be hot if you're a woman. It works on men too. Oh yes, you're right there. Okay, how about this one? Gay men are all great cooks and decorators.
Oh God, no. Oh God,
well,
no.
If they are, I'm not gay, because I'm not a great cook, and I certainly am not great at decorating either.
I've got half that equation. I've cooked for plenty of people that I'm convinced if somebody didn't cook for them, they'd be dead today. No, I can't decorate my way out of a wet paper bag. I mean, I have an aesthetic. It just ain't ever going to be printed in a magazine anywhere.
Mm-hmm. How about this one? Gay parents produce gay children.
Now, how interesting would that be if your parents were secretly gay? Did you ever think about that?
I know it's
not.
No,
I'm dead serious.
How stupid can they be? Because I've heard somebody say if you allow a gay couple or a lesbian couple to have children, the kids are going to turn out to be lesbian or gay. This is crazy. Crazy. Well, I just thought we'd look at some of those odd myths that are basically queer myths. Who was your original mother, Lance? I know you're a Christian.
What do you mean I only have one mother?
Okay, and take it all the way back to the beginning. Who was your original mother? I know you're a Christian. Is there an Eve?
Who gave birth to me? Is this a trick question? Are you trying to get me?
Is there an Eve? Is there an Eve?
Is there an Eve?
Yes, an original mother, an Eve, like in Adam and Eve.
Oh, is she supposed to be our original mother?
Well, who?
I'm thinking our original mother is the Earth.
Oh, so
or let's take it a step further. Isn't our original mother the divine. I mean, you
Well,
can go one of two ways with that. You can go the earthbound pagan route, or you can go the mystical, metaphysical, spiritual route with that one, and that's where my head goes.
well, if there is an original Eve, who is the mother of us all, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Do you know that a few years back, scientists found what they called the original Eve?
Oh, and she was a black African, wasn't she?
Yes, she was. And as soon as they realized that that's what she was, everything became hush hush. And
Yeah,
I had
that covered skull in a cave in Palestine back in the late '60s.
and I had a few of my white friends say, "I didn't have any black mother." Well,
Isn't that
was the original Eve then white?
isn't that just
Was
ridiculous?
she yellow? Was she brown? Was she red? Scientists say she was black. And of course, from an original stems everything that follows thereafter. So guess what, Lance?
What's that?
We got so-called black blood in our history.
Dude, I'm all over it. You know, next time I've got $50 to $100 laying around that I don't know what to do with, I want to do one of those. You know, you can do a little mouth swab thing and mail it off to a lab, and they will pinpoint for you geographically. How do they? I'm trying to think what the terminology is. It's they will pinpoint the area of the planet that your ancestors are most likely to have come from, and they do it. It's through the mother's line. It's your matrilineal, mitochondrial DNA something lineage thing, and they track it. It's all it's all biological. And I found a documentary that on PBS that aired a couple of Februarys ago. It was called African American Lives, and it featured Henry Louis Gates Jr. and he did this mouth swab thing with a bunch of celebrities, basically Quincy Jones, Oprah Winfrey, whatever, and showed them on a map of the world, where their ancestry was most likely, where their ancestors most likely were from.
Yeah.
And the part I thought was really cool about the show, beyond all that, which was interesting too, was then he shows this kind of, Italian American looking guy who's 1/8 African by lineage, according to the mouth swab test. And I thought, can you imagine? I would love to be that person that gets their test back and can go, you know what? I'm African American. What's up? Why not? That's our racist society. If you have one drop of black blood in this country, you are black. Look at what we just went through with Obama. Yeah. To the majority of America, he's a black man. I'm like, y'all, he's just as white as he is black. I mean, literally, just as white as he is black. And the only thing that would tip that is if on the so-called white side of his family, there was actually a little bit of African lineage, which again goes back to the racism that's inherent in our society. Who we see as black, who we see as white, what does it mean? So I follow you on that one, brother. I think it's fascinating.
Is religion a choice?
Absolutely. Where are you going with this? You think it's not?
Well, I know that humans usually choose whatever religion is the preeminent one of their area of residence or of their nation.
We had this discussion last time, remember, when we talked about the my adult conversion to Christianity at the hands of the Dalai Lama?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many adult converts to Christianity can claim that the Dalai Lama pointed them in that direction, but here I am.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Right. We're shaped by the dominant religious context of our society.
Yeah, and we are a Christian nation. Therefore, the majority of the people that live in
Now, Ace, we are a Judeo-Christian society.
Okay, so I missed. Okay, Judeo-Christian. I agree, but
Yeah.
that's what we are, and it's what most people choose as a result. There are those of us, like myself, etc., and a few others that choose to be just a little bit more thoughtful about all of this. The
Now,
biggest problem.
I'm a Christian pagan.
Yeah.
Do
Well,
you have any idea what that means?
I probably do, but I don't know that I want to say right now.
Oh,
biggest
you're terrible.
the
Well,
biggest
I think. Here's what I think. I think that it absolutely follows if you really follow Christianity to where it ought to lead you, that you should worship the earth. The earth is God's creation. God speaks to us through God's creation. We should pay attention to the earth. We should listen to it. I think we should worship it. I think we should beg the earth's forgiveness every time we lay down a sidewalk, a road, a gas pipeline. I mean, to me, it's a living, breathing. It is our gift from the divine. And
This is quite Native American, you know.
Well, but for my part, I don't perceive a conflict between that and Jesus. You know, it's like I can totally do the God, Jesus, Mary, say the rosary, all that stuff, and at the same time, my Christian congregation, we worship outdoors.
Well, you can
Now-
down south.
Okay. Well, this time of year, it still gets a little tricky. I mean, we've had some 20-minute services for.
Well, I think the biggest problem with religionists is that they like to believe theirs is the only correct belief. And that goes to all around the world. The largest religious body, of course, is the Muslim group. And that covers a great portion of the world.
Where are you getting that from? I thought there were more Christians than anybody else.
Oh, no. The Christian group is actually a small group. Mm-hmm. The Muslims and the Hindus, et cetera, they have some very, very large populations that believe in those ways. But they also, just like the Christians here and maybe around the world.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disagree with you. With the aid of the World Wide Web, Christianity claims 2.1 billion adherents, Islam only 1.5 billion. But guess what the next largest number is?
What?
It's a classification that this website that I just randomly pulled up, which I'm sure is completely wrong and you're right, but let's just go with this for the sake of argument. Number 3 classification is secular / non-religious / agnostic / atheist, i.e. Bill Maher. Then followed by Hinduism, Chinese traditional religion, Buddhism, primal / indigenous, African traditional, is it diasporic, you know, of the diaspora. Yeah. Sikhism, here's one I've never heard of, Juche. I got to look that up. All right, I'm looking for earth-based. Okay, neo-paganism is listed as number 19, above Unitarian Universalism. Go neo-paganism. Unitarian Universalism, with 800,000 adherents in the world, just barely edges out Rastafarianism at 600,000.
Yeah.
What's spiritism? What is that? Is that worshiping candles or something? What is that?
It could be, I suppose, yeah.
Let's find out.
I have a lot of people that think I'm an atheist, you know. I'm actually not. But because it's so difficult to talk about, since our understandings are so finite, I think we have to learn to look at the whole pictures in life. And certain incidents in life can really send us on hunts for answers with regard to our spirituality. This particular hunt for me got me 3 university majors that I never intended to get. My desired major was English, since I could become a teacher. But I ended up with majors in abnormal psychology and counseling, biblical literature and theology, and social science. And all because I was trying to find some answers for myself. My mother, however, was happy because she thought I was going to get into something stable and out of show business. Now, I know many folks probably think that I am an atheist, but there actually is no way I could be because of what happened in my life. I guess I could, I guess I could be an atheist because it makes more sense than faith does to me, because faith doesn't need really a lot of sense. It just needs belief. And yet, when I think about my life, it has also made little sense to me so much of the time, because from childhood, my life has been filled with what I have come to call woo-woos, W-O-O-W-O-O. Woo-woo, woo-woo, you know.
That sounds sexual. Where are you going with this?
Folks today call this psychic abilities.
Oh.
I simply call it seeing things one has no understanding of. Couple all of this with being raised in an evangelical Protestant home and 14 years of perfect attendance in Sunday school. I had to live with woo-woos. Now, all of my woo-woos didn't convince me there was a God. However, I believed that my woo-woos were just a part of human nature and things that humans could experience if they allowed themselves to be sensitive to nature. What changed my life and led me to my university studies and the search was what happened to me in the mid-50s. I have called it a life-to-death-to-life experience. And no, it was not a near-death experience as people talk about them today. This experience allowed me to have contact with what I can only conceive as my Creator. And it was not like really any God I had been taught about. So therefore, I am not what you would call an atheist. I'm also not what you would call a religious person. But I definitely know I am a spiritual being. And when I said on, I think it was the last show, the most important words that our Creator might want to hear from us would be, thank you, I meant it. Now, maybe sometime in the future, because we're closing out the show today, I can probably tell you about that life-to-death-to-life experience. And it does sound a lot like what you may have heard people talk about in nowadays. Mine took place back in the 50s. The only thing that I had heard that even come close to it was what I'd learned in Sunday school about Lazarus being raised from the dead. But I did experience that, and it changed my life. And it sent me on a tremendous hunt for answers, reality answers, not religious answers. But I had to look into the religious area to find my reality as well. And that's why I think that the churches and the religions do provide the crutches that we need at times of weakness in life. When we don't know what else to do or say or who to turn to, etc., they do give us a crutch. So I went through all of that too. No comments from you?
I'm so envious of people that have conversional experiences. I've always been a seeker, but nothing earth-shattering ever led me to any of my major faith convictions. I guess I sort of got there slowly.
Well, I've had a number of people say after they heard about my experience, oh, I wish I could have something like that. No, you don't. It can really, screw up your life right afterwards. I tell you, after I had come back, I actually wanted to commit suicide and tried, because it was so wonderful on the other side that it made life here seem like real crap. And, you go through some pretty heavy, I guess is a good word, heavy experiences as a result of having experienced something like a life to death to life experience. Even people that have experienced near death experiences where they simply, rise out of their body on a deathbed or a hospital bed or whatever and things like that, or an accident, and then go back. They were near death. Those things change people too, very much so. Yeah. But
yeah, I've had things of the sort.
you don't want to wish for something like that.
Oh, I never said I wished for it. I said I'm envious of people who have powerful conversion experiences.
Well, that certainly was a powerful one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, it certainly
But you
was.
you never do anything halfway. That's your style. It's true.
I don't know. Like I say, my life before that was filled with woo-woos from age 4 on, and to have those psychic things when you're a child like that, And I know when I wrote my autobiography, I tried to tell the kids, because that's who I wrote it for. My dad once told me when I told him what I had seen, in one of my psychic things. He says, if you say anything to anybody about this, I'm going to stick my fist right down your throat. Whoa. So I had to learn to keep quiet about these little psychic things, because he said people don't believe them, And that particular incident was when I was like 8 years old. I saw our neighbor boy flat like a pancake in a casket, and I was helping to carry the casket. And I told Dad, I said, I think we should tell Ralph about his son. And Dad said, no, you do this and I'll put my fist down your throat. 2 weeks after that, Ralph went out, started up the tractor, and didn't know his little kid had crawled out of the yard fence and was sitting in front of the wheel, and he drove over him and flattened him out like a pancake. And I was asked to be a pallbearer for the little boy. And afterwards, I was so in turmoil inside, and I told Dad, I said, we could have possibly stopped it. And Dad said to me, do you think Ralph would have believed Joe if you told him that his kid was going to be killed?
No.
No, he wouldn't. So he says, you just got to learn to keep your mouth shut when you see things and hear things like that. It's been not easy. And there again, I people say, oh, I wish I was psychic. If you have the sensitivity and it does happen to you, you have to learn to cope with it. And it's not easy necessarily to cope with such things,
Well, people think, you never get to pick or choose how that gift is going to affect you. That's what they estimate. It's like, it'd be great to be psychic. And it's like, but it's always a double-edged sword.
I have to stop and think, should I talk to that person or not?
Right.
And I've learned that what I have had to do, if it keeps coming back to me, let's say that I had a psychic thing about you, and I say, no, I'm not going to say anything to you. And then,
do you have to touch me to have one of these?
Do I have to what?
You have to touch me to have one of these? So
no,
I say of the distance?
No. Not, I know that some people do, but I don't.
Oh, dear.
And then it came to me again, and I'm saying, oh, dear, go away, I still won't talk to you. If it comes to me the third time, I've finally decided that I work on the old thing, three's a charm. Okay, get off my back. I will talk to you or talk to the person. And then I will go to them and say, okay, I don't know what this means, but here's what I saw or heard or whatever. Then I will tell you. And then it's off of my chest, and I can go on my happy way. And the person that I told it to has to deal with the psychic thing that I saw.
Got it.
So
That's
it's
a good,
not,
it's a good plan.
it's the only way. I used to do readings for people, but I don't like to do that either because that's terribly exhausting.
You know, that's that 3 times the charm thing reminds me of an old Southern rule. You know, whenever somebody offers you something, you're supposed to politely decline 3 times, and after the 3rd time, if they insist, great, fine. Well, I could never. No, I could just pop. No, well, that'd be great. Thanks.
Oh dear, the old clock is striking. Folks, you can't lift a man out of a well if you're in the well with him. Think about it. We'll be back next week. Love you.